Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Semoga keselamatan serta rahmat Allah senantiasa meliputi kita semua, dan semoga keberkahan senantiasa Allah berikan kepada kita atas apapun yang Allah titipkan kepada kita, baik itu keberkahan atas kesehatan kita, keberkahan atas umur kita, maupun keberkahan atas harta-harta kita, sehingga keberkahan itu mendorong kita untuk semakin semangat meningkatkan ketakwaan kita kepada Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Nah, teman-teman, seperti biasa, mari kita tingkatkan kualitas ibadah kita kepada Allah dan kualitas ibadah kita kepada sesama, yaitu bagaimana kita menerapkan akhlak terbaik kita kepada sesama manusia, baik itu saudara sesama iman maupun kepada saudara yang berbeda iman, ya teman-teman ya. Nah, mari kita doakan admin dari channel sang pembuat video, yaitu admin dari channel Jalur Hidayah. Semoga Allah berikan keberkahan kepadanya, karena kali ini kita akan belajar ilmu dari videonya, ya. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Semoga Allah mudahkan kita semua untuk menangkap pelajaran atas video ini.
I often get asked why I became a Muslim, so I thought in this video I would explain to you guys why I chose to become a Muslim. For context, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm a revert. I reverted to Islam about 13 months ago. So it started off when I was in high school. I had two Christian friends, and I was always very fascinated with religion, so I'd ask them a lot of questions. The thing is, with my Christian friends, they could never really give me any concrete answers when I was trying to probe into their religion or trying to maybe prove it wrong. And then 6 months later, I ended up getting a Muslim friend, and I would ask him the same questions because I was just as open-minded and I was just as curious. The thing with him is anytime I tried to pressure him or prove him wrong, he could back up his statements. He had more concrete answers and he had more yes-no answers, that as much as maybe I didn't like the answers, he could give them to me, which my Christian friends couldn't. This led me to want to start praying, not like how the Muslims pray, not like how we pray, but just praying in general. I didn't know who I was praying to. I didn't know what God I was praying to, but the most common thing that I would ask for is I would ask for guidance. And over a long enough time horizon, I ended up realizing that Islam is the only logical religion. I would compare it to Christianity, I'd compare it to Judaism, I'd compare it to Mormonism, and none of them really made any sense. And when I looked at Islam as a whole, the religion, it was very easy for me to understand the oneness of Allah. That's what makes you a Muslim. And from there, I took my shahada and I became a Muslim. Person who changed my life and helped guide me towards Islam. 18 months ago, I brought in a new business partner into my company, and he ended up being a Muslim. He was the first Muslim that I had ever met. And he really intrigued me because he was such a respectable man. I saw how he treated his sister, I saw how he treated his mother, and he would always be so kind to every single person that he met. This really intrigued me about the religion because he was the first Muslim I met, right? So he was setting an example of Islam, and because he was so kind, I wanted to start to learn about the religion. I would ask him questions all the time. He's the person who taught me how to pray. And we even ended up traveling to Pakistan together and living together there for 3 months, where we traveled and visited different mosques. He was the first person to take me to a mosque. He was the first person to buy me a Quran. And he's also the person that I went on Umrah with. And honestly, if it wasn't for him, I may have never became a Muslim. I know that Allah is the one who guided me, but he guided me through that man. And I love him so dearly, and it shows one major thing. Your kindness of being a Muslim could influence someone else and be the reason that they become a Muslim as well. I think the best form of dawah that we can do is by setting an amazing example for Muslims. So when someone meets you and you're the first Muslim that they've ever met, they go, wow, Muslims are amazing. And it encourages them to look into the religion, and inshallah they become a Muslim too, because that's what happened to me. And this is why I think Christianity makes no sense, because Christianity at this point isn't even Christianity, it's Paulism. Everybody's following the religion that Paul created. I constantly hear these things from Christians going, oh, well, Paul said this, Paul said this. Isn't your religion supposed to be based around Jesus? Why are you following what Paul's saying and not following what Jesus is saying? It's like in Islam, the most important thing is the oneness of Allah. And in Christianity, the most important thing is the divinity of Christ. If it is the most important thing in the religion, why is it only vaguely mentioned twice, to where it could be slightly interpreted that that's the case? If the way for you to be a Christian is to believe that Jesus is God, why does the Bible not just repeatedly say, Jesus is God, Jesus is God? Like how the Quran says, there is no God but Allah. And who's Paul? Who gave Paul the authority? Why are we listening to Paul? What's Paul's backstory? Apostle Paul? I don't believe it. I am not buying it. Who's this guy who man-made his own religion? reaction that my father had when I told him that I became a Muslim. For context, we didn't grow up religious. We didn't grow up atheist. We didn't grow up Christian. We just grew up that you could make whatever choices you want. So I knew that my parents would already be pretty accepting. But still, a son always has that little bit of fear with his father. I was always worried, what is he going to say? I was always worried if he'd kind of judge me for it. It took me about 2 weeks after I took my Shahada to build up the courage to want to tell my dad that I reverted to Islam. I decided to call him. I called him up and I was like, hey, Dad, I got to tell you something. And he goes, yeah, what's up? I reverted to Islam. It was silent. I was nervous. I didn't know what he was going to say. And his immediate response was, yeah, I figured you did. And then he follows that up with, okay, so what does that mean moving forward? Do we need to do things differently when you come home? He didn't question me why. He didn't disown me. He didn't say it was a bad decision. He didn't criticize my decision. All he did was he accepted me, asked if we needed to do anything different when I come home. Alhamdulillah, that is the best father that I could ever ask for, and I am so grateful to have him. And it's an amazing reminder to everybody that we should be so grateful for our parents, because there are people who don't have good parents. So if you're someone who has a good parent, tell them you love them. Tell your dad you love him, because you only have so much time with him right now. You should appreciate it while you have it. It's how my grandfather reacted when I told him that I reverted to Islam. For context, my grandpa's been a Mormon his entire life, and he's 75, so he's been practicing the Mormon religion for 75 years. He had 6 children. One was my mom, and has raised every single one of them to be Mormon. My mom left the Mormon church, but he's been going to church his entire life, so he's very Mormon. I went over to their house and I told him, hey, Grandpa, I wanted to let you know that I became a Muslim. And he was actually super intrigued. He was super interested that I chose the faith of Islam. Because apparently he was actually doing some research on his end, and he found out that Mormonism and Islam, if you look at all religions, are the 2 religions that have the most similarities. And he told me personally, he's like, I'm just happy that you believe in God. He's like, I would love if you were Mormon, but I'm just happy that you believe in God, because he knew that I grew up my entire life not believing in God. And now, a year later, after telling him that I became a Muslim, he'll send me messages and go, hey, did you know that Mormonism and Islam also believe in the same thing here? He'll be asking like ChatGPT, and then he'll send me a message, all the cool things that he found out about Islam and the religion that he believes in. And it just makes me so grateful to be able to have a conversation with my grandpa where he has a completely different faith, and I can sit down with him and we can talk for hours about what I believe and what he believes. It's not a debate, it's just an open conversation, and we both love each other at the end of the day. Why do you think that the West criticizes Islam? Serious question. Ask yourself, why is the West attacking Islam and not want Islam to grow? Is it because they know that it goes against their biggest industries? Is it because they know that it's too powerful for them to control? I think that if somebody was trying to find out what religion is true, all they would have to do is look at what the media says about religions. If you have every single media outlet talking negatively about one religion, what does that say? I don't see anywhere trying to stifle the message of Christianity, but I see everywhere people are trying to stifle the message of Islam. But I don't know about you guys, but if we look at the stories of the prophets, every time that the prophet was preaching the message of Islam or preaching the message of the religion at the time, the locals try to say they're crazy. The leaders of the cities try to say that they're crazy and try to propagate negative things about Islam being preached. And now we look at it right now. Islam is growing at the fastest rate that it's ever been growing at, and there's never been this much negative press against Islam. It's time the world wakes up and sees that Islam is the truth, and you can just tell by the fact that everybody's trying to stop it from growing. I think Christianity has failed, and it truly makes me sad, because America, where I grew up, was a Christian nation. It was founded as a Christian nation, and it had morals. It had where if you were a man and you walked around and you shook another man's hand and you swore by God, that meant something. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Where are all the problems in the world coming from right now? It's coming from the West, and it was once a Christian nation, and it's now failed. Where does all of the prostitution come from? All of the gambling, all of the drugs, everything that's bad. It all comes from the West. And it makes me sad, because Christians used to be so strong. They used to follow their book, but nobody follows their own book anymore. If you truly read the Bible and you truly follow it to a T, you wouldn't be like the Christians we have today. They're judging each other, which didn't Jesus say to love thy neighbor? They're criticizing everybody. Didn't Jesus say to do unto others what you want done unto yourself? And it hurts me to see what was once such a strong nation and a strong religion, regardless of what we disagree with. If you practice Christianity, you'll be a better person. And it's fallen apart, and it breaks my heart. I wish Christians would do better.
Ya, teman-teman, luar biasa penuturan dari sang muallaf ini ya, dari Amerika ini ya, bahwasanya ini harus bisa menjadi pengingat kita bahwa ketika kita menjalankan syariat kita ya. Sebagai seorang muslim kita harus selalu bersemangat atau menyemangati diri bahwa kita harus bisa mempertahankan akhlak terbaik kita ya. Karena sebagaimana penuturan beliau terkesan ketika bertemu dengan seorang muslim pertamanya ya. Jadi beliau menekankan ketika beliau nantinya menjadi seorang muslim, beliau juga harus bisa untuk menunjukkan ini loh kebaikan seorang muslim. Inilah muslim yang sebenarnya. Inilah ajaran Islam yang sebenarnya. Jadi sangat memungkinkan untuk orang lain yang ketika nantinya melihat kita akan terkesan dan lantas mencari tahu kenapa dia bisa sebaik ini akhlaknya ya. Dan nantinya akan mendorong apa sih agamanya. Nah, itulah dia teman-teman. Semangat seperti itu yang harus kita ambil ya teman-teman. Dan lantas luar biasanya di akhir video yang beliau sampaikan adalah bahwasannya semoga Kristen bisa lebih baik. Ini contoh bagaimana mendoakan kebaikan kepada saudara selain iman kita ya teman-teman ya. Nah, semoga video ini bermanfaat ya untuk kita semua. Akhir kata saya tutup dengan doa kebaikan untuk bersama. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Semoga keselamatan serta rahmat Allah senantiasa meliputi kita semua. Dan semoga keberkahan senantiasa Allah berikan kepada kita atas apapun usaha kita dalam rangka meraih ridhonya. Amin ya rabbal alamin.